When when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind Around with John Pollock and Ting, the A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind Around for Monday night, download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind Around for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rewind a Raw with John Pollock and Wai Ting with you here on this Monday night, Tuesday morning, whenever you are listening to it. Thank you for tuning in. Hello, Wai.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm doing superb.
Why is that?
You know what I'm drinking right now?
Water.
I'm drinking water.
Oh, beautiful. Happy to hear it.
Yep. People were concerned.
Does this have anything to do with our conversation last week?
Yeah, it's weird. Whenever I will get comments, because we do these shows, and I don't want to say they don't have a lasting impact on me, but we do so many of these, Wai. I just file every conversation,
especially this month.
Yeah, it's just everything's a blur, and even when it's not G1 season, there are so many times that I will get like a comment from someone. And my response is, how do they know that? And I'm just assuming it's like a private conversation we've had. It's like, you and I don't have private conversations. It's like everything is being somehow on a show. It's being recorded. And I was like, oh, I must have said that on a show with you, talking about my water intake. But anyway, I do recall that conversation because it was only a few days ago. But
it was on a G1 show, wasn't it?
Sure. I bet it was. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about when I got my water bottle, which spurred this conversation. And
were you here with a water bottle, or
no? I was.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
I'm trying to trace back like a conversation from like 2 days ago. I think it was. When was the last G1 show?
Sunday, wasn't it?
It was Sunday.
Yeah. We had a Saturday, Sunday this past week.
I feel we had this conversation just yesterday, then, if not the day before.
God, yesterday was Sunday, dude.
Yeah, I'm saying maybe
doesn't that feel weird? Like it doesn't. If Sunday feels like that show feels like a long time ago, and it was yesterday morning.
Well, a lot has happened since then, of course. We watched an edition of Raw. We earlier this morning there was a Becky Lynch conference call which I took part in, and we recorded an edition of Ask Away that is set to be released on Wednesday, a little early for our cafe patrons this month.
Yes, I'm excited to play this clip later because it was Wai Ting on this conference call, and I knew that you were going to grab a clip from this conference call, and man, I was delighted when I clicked on this, and it was a question from Wai Ting himself, and I think Wai clearly one of the best questions of the whole conference call.
Well, this whole conference call is up on our cafe feed right now, so if you choose to listen to it, please go ahead. But I will say, I'm not sure how much people are going to necessarily get as far as information goes out of this conference call, other than the cliplet that you might hear on this particular show, because these conference calls are like...
Some of them are tough, and I think it's
really
a great insight
questions
into what some of these performers have to do on a relatively routine basis. And I have all the admiration in the world for whether it is fighters, wrestlers that have all these media demands, and you pretty much... sometimes you'll hear a story of someone like kind of losing it, but they're pretty rare. It's like they do it with a smile on their face, and I have all the credit in the world because I could not imagine being in that position if the roles were reversed and being able to pull that off as much as they have to.
Well, especially Becky Lynch, who I think from all accounts seems to be somebody who, despite I'm sure all the media requests that she's getting, I was marveling at how well she was kind of accepting all of these questions, despite, maybe bad connections. She did her best trying to make some of these questionable questions, I'll say, into somewhat interesting sound bites. So if anything, I thought maybe the whole thing was worth listening just for that, to see how somebody like Becky Lynch is able to navigate through it all. I got to find out what she looks for in a man. Somebody asked that.
Wasn't your question?
No, it was not. No. She says every man is different, and she can't generalize.
God, I was drinking my water there. Jeez, I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah. So fun. Hopefully we'll be doing a few more of these. But great. I felt bad for her, honestly, knowing that she was backstage at Raw, probably getting set for like a big a day's worth of television, and having to sit there for close to an hour to answer some of these questions. I was kind of amazed.
I remember when I was very, very young, and this would have been around 2005, and I'll always remember this compliment because it made me feel like I was at least going in the right direction, even if maybe my presentation skills maybe were not up to my liking, especially if I listen now. But I remember interviewing John Cena, and it was kind of just going through any question you can imagine, like that you would have, knowing kind of the behind the scenes stuff and answering questions such as that. And I did the interview, and then afterwards he made a point to really thank me and said, I really like doing those kinds of interviews. I don't always get to do ones like that. So that to me is, I imagine it's, sometimes I feel that wrestling media gets painted with a certain brush, and I always kind of push back against that. And I feel that a lot of the performers, especially if it's done in a respectful way, I think they much more prefer to just speak about real topics as opposed to a lot of fluff. And I think we sometimes underestimate how many of those kinds of interviews they have to do ad nauseum, where they're going to the local TV station where they're looking at their run sheet 30 minutes before going to air. Oh, we've got a WWE wrestler coming in, and it's going to be a very surface level interview. And they are great in doing those kinds of interviews because they understand that is who the audience here is, of people that are probably not going to be buying tickets, but we have to try and come across as the most fan-friendly entertainers that are appealing to an audience that probably doesn't know who we are. So I mean, that is a skill.
Certainly, yeah. And some of these outlets, I suppose they're not necessarily people who cover wrestling full time like us, and so they're gonna have to ask questions that really kind of satisfy more of a local slant, or something
Sure.
that caters towards an audience that obviously is not an audience like ours, who cares about certain topics that our audience would care about. It would be more so things like, what is the first thing you look for in a man, Becky Lynch? And I do respect that. But I think I suppose it just kind of shows the wide variety of audiences that WWE wrestlers kind of have to cater to with interviews like these.
All right. Well, we will get to that, and maybe we'll talk a bit more about his experience on this conference call. But where shall we start off first, Way? I guess we should mention last week we did this, and I think we're going to continue to do the prize giveaway on Tuesdays on Rewind to SmackDown. So we will be moving that over. There's quite a lot on Mondays, I find, with the news and with everything else. So I think we're going to spread that out, and Tuesday is the new night that we will be doing our draw, which is eligible for all members of the Post Wrestling Cafe to win a Post Wrestling prize pack from the Post Wrestling store, which rumor has it, Way, there's a sale going on for another 2 weeks.
Until the end of the G1. So as long as we continue with this schedule, we'll also be giving 20% off to all patrons. So now is really the perfect time to give the Post Wrestling Patreon a try. Patreon.com/postwrestling or postwrestlingcafe.com.
Yes, and we greatly appreciate all the feedback to the G1 shows that we've been doing. There will be 4 this week and a total of 5 shows up on the Post Wrestling Cafe from now until Sunday. So we'll quickly run through those. First off, the G1 shows will be dropping Tuesday, Thursday, and then Saturday and Sunday are the Osaka shows. So all of those will be out for members of the Post Wrestling Cafe. Rewind to SmackDown will be out Tuesday night. That'll feature our prize giveaway. And time permitting, I'm going to try and listen to the Austin interview with Hulk Hogan, because I imagine that's going to be an interesting discussion. So time permitting, I'm going to try and listen to that to discuss Tuesday night. Special Wednesday edition of Ask Away this month. We are not going to be putting out on Friday. Instead, it will come out Wednesday. There's no G1 show that day, so a break in the schedule, and thus Ask Away. I think it's about 90 minutes of Way and I answering your questions, so you can look forward to that. Thursday, we have the Cafe Hangout live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, as always. And this week, Way, our guest is...
Rich Craich from Voices of Wrestling, one half of the mastermind team behind the Voices of Wrestling Network, and he will be joining us for I would say a bit more of a general chat about the news. We find that, for the Hangout, we've received probably a lot more positive feedback when we start off with something perhaps topical. And this week we're going to try doing that with somebody who is a friend of the network, Rich Craich from Voices of Wrestling. So he'll be joining us at the top of the show, talking about anything that's in the news, and as well talking a bit about the G1 thus far.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having Rich on. So that'll be taking place Thursday. Lots of topics to discuss with Rich. Then we go into the weekend where we have the G1 Climax shows. Tentatively, we may have a special show out on Friday. So you can pay attention to that. It'll be on the free feed. I don't want to officially announce it yet, but it'll most likely be there.
Also up next on Thursday?
Oh, yes. I skipped up next. That is on Thursday, Braden and Davey, as we get 1 week closer to the TakeOver special. And I believe this week we will know Jordan Miles' opponent for the Breakout Tournament Final at TakeOver, which was taped a while back, but will air this week. And Davey will be excited as to who wins. Cruel Summer this weekend, WH Park. I am excited about this one, Way. On Saturday, WH Park and Mike Murray, the O'Grady's connection, have come together, and they will be chatting the G1 from 2009, featuring the final between Shinsuke Nakamura and Togi Makabe. I am this should be a lot of fun with these two.
Yeah, absolutely. Hearing Mike talk about Togi Makabe. I have a request. I don't know when WH might have recorded this particular episode. I forget. But maybe for the next series that WH does, I think he needs to get Vivian Murray, Mike's daughter.
Oh, that would be great. Yes.
Who, currently in the standings, Mike is only 1 point above daughter Vivian in the G1 contest. So, we'll see at the end of this G1 who the real expert is.
And then Sunday, WH is back again, chatting the 2010 G1 final. He's going to be with a returning co-host with Striga, the man behind the Eastern Lariat podcast with Dylan Fox, who has also been on the show, did a great show covering the 1998 final. They're going to be discussing Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Satoshi Kojima. And if you want to catch up on these Cruel Summers, I definitely recommend this past weekend, he had Joel Abraham on and Alan Farrell. And this Alan Farrell show was awesome. It was just talking about wrestling message board wars in the mid-2000s. I mean, Alan is the encyclopedia, in my opinion, of wrestling history. And the trivia where he has to go through and figure out the different champions at the time of 2008 when this G1 was going on, and to just pretty much hear his brain work was something else. I highly recommend checking that out.
I highly recommend the Joel Abraham show as well, talking about Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Yuji Nagata. Joel actually did a great deal of research on his own that even stumped WH Park a little bit. So WH is just like bringing all the greatest minds of pro wrestling podcasting out.
Rookie of the year. I mean, WH isn't a rookie, but in terms of being in this host role with a rookie show, breakout performer, best new addition.
He's the Lance Archer, I would say, of post wrestling this year.
I don't know if he'll appreciate that or not, but that definitely comes with love if you've been listening to our G1 reviews of Mr. Archer's performances.
Well, he dresses better than Lance Archer, of course.
Did you like in my news update today, Way? I pretty much... you and I did our predictions at the end of the G1, and then we kind of just do them on the spot. And then today I actually went through and logically thought them out. So I changed up a bunch of my predictions. I think it's 100% Lance Archer's beating Kazuchika Okada, or at least 95% sure after I predicted Okada.
We shall see. I mean, after I think seeing the Naito Moxley result, I don't know if anything's really guaranteed at this point.
Unless my math is screwed up. If Okada wins on Tuesday morning, then Will Ospreay is out. And I can't see that happening. And Sonata would be out too ahead of their Osaka match. So I think Lance Archer is going to beat Okada, which was completely your prediction. And it was your prediction before this past show too. You've been kind of calling this one for a couple shows now. And I think it's going to come true.
We shall see.
All right. So you can check out the whole schedule, postwrestling.com. And of course, you can sign up, postwrestlingcafe.com. 5 cafe shows coming out this week between the G1 and Ask Away. Let's go on over to the news, and there was a decent amount of news coming out. I guess the biggest story was a lawsuit that's been filed by Jerry Lawler, a wrongful death lawsuit against the county jail that had incarcerated Brian Lawler and where he died last year. This was the Hardeman County Jail, and of course, it was actually a year to the day that Brian Lawler died, and it was ruled a suicide at the time. And Lawler has kind of talked over the past year about his suspicions about all of this, and then the lawsuit has come out and lists a number of defendants here, including John Doolin, who is the sheriff that Lawler dealt with. It's a tragic story anytime you're talking about a suicide, a death of someone that was only 46 years old. But the details in this suit about Lawler, essentially, Brian Lawler was arrested for a DUI and evading police, and also was driving with a revoked license. So he was arrested on July the 7th, and his death occurred on July 29th. And Jerry was in contact with this sheriff, and according to Jerry Lawler, it was the sheriff that convinced Jerry to keep him in jail because he needs help, and they would be able to provide him help in the jail. And rather than posting the bond, they left him there. And obviously that's something I can't imagine what Jerry Lawler lives with now, thinking about that here he was, trying to help his son, and this is the outcome. And he tells this chilling story in the press conference today about taking a photo of Brian after he had died, sending it to the sheriff and stating, "Remember when you told me that you were going to keep Brian safe?" And the sheriff just responded, "I'm sorry for your loss." And they go over that this jail was not equipped to handle, to prevent a suicide. The fact that Brian had disclosed that he had dealt with past suicide attempts, but because they had happened prior to 2 years before the time of his arrest, they listed him as a no on a yes or no question about if he had attempted suicide before. And, they're just pointing out that this was not a conducive environment for someone that admitted to past suicide attempts, that had struggled with anxiety and depression, and ultimately died in this jail. So they are seeking Jerry Lawler's suit. They're seeking $3 million along with punitive damages, and wanting to see changes here to this jail, that they are more equipped and have, I guess, a better protocol. It's a devastating story, and this family, obviously, this is not something you ever get past, and a wrongful death lawsuit is not going to change any of that. But it's certainly a case that we'll have to hear the county's response to this, and it looks like they will get their day in court. But it doesn't paint a very promising picture here, at least from the prosecution side, the plaintiff side.
I have no idea, what proper protocol might be for a case like this, whether or not, but obviously Lawler feels like he has, some grounds for a lawsuit. I feel terrible for him and his entire family. And, as we know with like court cases, he's going to have to confront a lot of these details just head on, probably for a long, long time before this whole thing is settled. But hopefully by that point, whenever that point arrives, he's able to, come to some conclusion that he might be satisfied with. So, I wish everybody the best.
It's just a very, very sad story. And I mean, just obviously this family wants some kind of conclusion about what exactly happened in this jail. And, it's just a very tough story when you look at it and feel like this, maybe it could have been preventable. And that's, I guess, the answer that they're ultimately seeking. All Elite Wrestling announced on Monday the ticket information for their first televised show, which will be October the 2nd at the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. Tickets are going to go on sale this Friday, and they're pricing the tickets way at $20, $35, $50, $75, $90, and they top out at $250 for the first 3 rows, which come with a commemorative chair. They're at least on the advertising material, they're listing all the major names: Omega, the Bucks, Jericho, Moxley, Hangman, Cody, Brandy Rhodes, Dr. Britt Baker. Those are the performers featured. And this is going to be, I guess, the next interesting one. This is a Wednesday night show. It's a very historic event, running a very large arena. And if we guesstimate that this is around, say, 16,000 people, are you feeling that Friday night we're going to be looking at this and saying, wow, these guys did it again? Or is there more, are you more conservative in the estimate this time around?
Yeah, being that I know initially, like, predicted a sellout rather quickly, but, thinking about that this is on a Wednesday in a town that isn't necessarily maybe as conducive to, like, vacationing, I would say, certainly not on a Wednesday. You would certainly wonder, like, do they have the audience that would travel to fill that arena? Within Washington itself, are there 16,000 people that are willing to go to see a wrestling show?
Or driving. I think that's kind of I think you're not looking at a flying audience, but more so a driving audience, that you will get people out of state coming to this, I feel.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the barometer should be 16,000 tickets, that should be kind of, they don't hit that mark, this is somehow not successful. I would say if you sell, I would say 8,000 tickets, I think that's a really strong start, and it's on par with what I would predict a Raw to do in Washington.
Now, how would that look on TV?
I think 8,000 will look, it'll look fine. I mean, they're going to scale the building to, not look gigantic like New Japan looked at the American Airlines Center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, depending on how they make it look, I think it can. 8,000 sounds pretty good to me. But I feel like everybody has always, I would say, underestimated these guys. Thinking about the historical significance of this being the first AEW show, I would maybe err more on the estimate of it being closer to the 10,000 or above mark. I certainly don't feel like price has that much to do with it. I think I
don't think so. I think these are very,
if you're going to show up, if you're going to make the drive, you're going to be willing to pay, at least double or even triple like what some of these advertised prices are to get your ticket. But they're very fair prices, and maybe this will encourage a lot of the locals that are, like, oh, there's something to do on a Friday night. I heard about this thing. It's only $20. Okay, I'll show up. I'll check it out. Maybe that'll encourage that audience, but it's a very fan-friendly price, and I think it's a price that, is more targeted towards aiming for that sellout rather than necessarily making the most profit.
Yeah, and there's also 2 months here before this show, and I'm also kind of interested to see, like, we'll have this on sale on Friday. How quick do they start putting tickets on sale for the subsequent shows right afterwards? It's going to be a lot of tickets going on sale in quick fashion that you're going to have to, this one's going to get so much attention. It's the first one, but they're going to have to get, if you want 2 months of leeway before the show, they're going to have to be putting tickets on sale pretty quickly for the other venues to follow.
Yeah. I think, the big question is how many they sell on that first day. And if they don't sell all of them on the first day, whether or not whatever happens at All Out might either build interest or maybe just kind of, maintain interest for this very first show.
Do you believe October the 2nd will feature CM Punk appearing on TNT?
I think that's such a big... I'm going to say no.
No.
Yeah.
That's going to be the topic probably discussed for the next 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it could change over that time. All Elite Wrestling has also signed Chris Van Vliet as a new member of their broadcast team. He's going to be starting with the October 2nd television show on TNT. And I guess last week was, a strong hint towards this when he was featured in the Road to All Out series. And yeah, I'm not surprised that they went after him. I think he's a really talented interviewer, and I guess people are going to look and see, is this going to mean that he will continue doing his interviews or not? Or if he's just like, this is going to be a lot of traveling for him if he's doing the show every week, and I guess would have access if they wanted him to do interviews with AEW talent.
Yeah, we had speculated whether or not, this would affect his, or a continued relationship with AEW might affect his WWE interviews. But I mean, if one person's offering you a full-time job, I can definitely understand why, you would sacrifice potential WWE interviews for for something like that. From what I've seen, he's a great interviewer. I liked him a lot on camera. I might have even liked him more than Shivani, to be honest with you, just so that you don't even get that constant comparison to the nostalgia. I like him in that control.
This definitely is a response to the Road 2 series. I'm not even saying it was a bad thing, but you're right. Like, it was very much transporting you back to Saturday nights at 6:05, and this is certainly a definite
new,
going with a more youthful presentation with Chris. Sure.
It seems like though they have a number of backstage interviewers now, and maybe they need that many, but for a 2-hour show once a week, I'm trying to because there's Alicia Atout, who have we seen recently?
She hasn't been on any of the Road 2 specials. I don't think she's.
Was she even at Fight?
I don't think she was on either of the Fyter Fest or Fight for the Fallen shows. I don't recall seeing her on either of those.
Yeah, and it was the other interviewer. I forget the name of at the moment, but the
Jen Durden.
Jen Durden. That's right.
That's right. That's right. They used her.
They've got her, and they've got obviously now Chris Van Vliet, and seems like Alex Marvez might have some type of backstage role from time to time as well. So they're definitely building up that team.
Jen Sturger. I messed up her last name.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, close.
So I mean, that team's getting quite big, and I'm trying to we await to see what specific role each person might play.
All right, moving on from that, we also had. I want to just ask you just your feedback just this weekend, just general impressions of the changes to the WWE Network, as you've had maybe some time to look at it. I had to go through all these issues with going through my Canadian login, but I've figured that out now, and it's a much improved login procedure where I used to have to go through about 7 or 8 different clicks before I could finally get in, and it's much easier now. So that's been already a positive. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Did you have to do anything different to log in for?
No, Canadian? It's just less steps, and it's also, it's just I don't have to go through putting in my Rogers login info, my WWE Network login, and then several other click to watch and this and this. And seriously, I think I showed you once. It's 7 steps to get into the network, and it every time had to do that.
I used to do it too. Now I actually I got my account through a American PayPal, so I just log right in. From what I've seen, it definitely, to me, I think the layout is better. I do feel like there are some kinks that they have to manage. To me, I love the fact that you can scrub through the timeline and see a thumbnail of whatever you're scrubbing to. I don't know if that works for everything, but at least for the current shows, you're able to do that, and that helps. But I have had an instance where it was kind of missed time, so what displayed in the thumbnail was not necessarily what portion of the show that it ended up landing on. But I'm sure in version 1.2 or 2.0, they'll figure everything out. I like the search. The search to me works really well. If you type in I was testing it out earlier today, typing out the most random names I could think of, how many Liger matches are on the WWE Network, and they displayed everything. No, they have a number of them. Obviously a bunch of WCW.
I'm blanking on WCW, of course. Yeah, I'm thinking more WWE matches.
Yeah. But you try that out yourself, and even typing in a Tom McGee, the thing, 2 Tom McGee matches on the WWE Network right now.
I tried it out typing in specific matches, and the match came out they have the actual match isolated.
Great, excellent. Yeah, so the search function works well. I will say the Superstar tab, I don't know how useful that is as yet. I think for current stars it might work really well, but they don't have profile pages for everybody listed yet. So if you're looking for a specific person, I recommend just going to the search function instead. Everything else, you still kind of have a bit of a weird way of finding everything where things are spread out between originals, in-ring, and then Raw, SmackDown, and NXT have their own specific tabs for some reason. Maybe certain people, maybe that's just what they discovered was the most popular on the show, on the network or something. But overall, I think it's an improvement. My favorite feature, perhaps, though, it's far easier now to find or to change the languages within the current modern pay-per-views when they, whenever they pan through all the announce tables and you see all the commentary teams, You can just like click on that the little gear icon, and you can select the language. I recorded actually. I screen captured like a little bit of sampling of this, and in particular, it was from a spot during the Braun Strowman Bobby Lashley match from Extreme Rules that just passed. Where, if you remember, Bobby Lashley Strowman threw Lashley directly into the Japanese announce table,
Right.
And I tweeted this thing out. Dude, like, it's like my most retweeted like thing ever. So if you want to see a bit of a clip of that, just go on my Twitter timeline.
Yeah, I guess, it's a small thing. Like the schedule, you used to be able to go like almost 2 weeks in advance and you could see the schedule, which, I mean, wasn't the most necessary function. But now it's just kind of the day of. So if you're trying to look ahead of any upcoming program, you can't really do that. And if you were in Canada and your login, that's now a dead link. So now I had some people contact me about this, but you have to go to watch.wwe.com to log in, and that will get you in if you're in Canada.
I think
it's
that's
the general one. Yeah,
that's the link for everybody.
Yeah, it's just that's what you have to go through, because prior you had to go to a specific login for if you were in Canada to log in with your cable provider.
I also want to make mention a listener of ours, Des Delgadillo, who is visually impaired. He wrote an excellent like whole kind of article talking about some of the limitations of the new WWE Network for visually impaired people. So hopefully that gets enough people to read it so that WWE Network can issue some of those changes. That is an article called WWE Network's Accessibility Foibles for Blind and Visually Impaired Users that exists on our website, postwrestling.com.
Yeah, and I actually sent that to the WWE Network's technical support, so I'm hoping they get back to us with something, because it's something I didn't even, I would have never realized if Des hadn't pointed it out, so I'm really glad he did and wrote that. Very well written, and a breakdown of all of it. Like, that's what he does for a living, is like looking at functionality of different websites, and he did it here for the WWE Network and the problems he's had to undergo with the new version of the network, which is not something people would be aware of, I'm sure.
One more news item. To Neil Dashwood, it was announced from Impact's Twitter during Raw, actually, that she is signed with Impact Wrestling. Yeah,
this was mentioned on Monday night by Impact. I think that it's, she was kind of hurt by injuries, or at least one injury in Ring of Honor. I think a shoulder injury that took her out for a few months, and really didn't catch fire in ROH. But you know what? The Women of Honor division has not really caught fire. I think it just, she really didn't do much there. I think Impact is going to be a noticeably better setup for her, because their Knockouts division, I think, is one of the best things they have at the moment, and hopefully this is a division where she can thrive in. And I like the fact that Impact is adding more women to their division and trying to build up the Knockouts division, because that is one of their staples presently.
I think it's a perfect addition. She, carries somewhat, like, she does carry name value, and I think it's a division that really seems like it's gaining a lot of momentum. I hope she's used well, and I hope she gets the success that maybe she didn't receive in Ring of Honor.
And the final thing is Way's discussion with Becky Lynch. So
discussion, please.
Wow, you spoke with her,
Way.
And
question.
It was. Well, wasn't it a second one? And the second one didn't.
I tried to get a second one in there, and she kayfabed me. So you can listen to the full version for that.
Yeah, we cut that one out. But first of all, let's hear the clip. This is Wei Ting in conversation with Becky Lynch.
I was very curious to know, for Extreme Rules, the build with yours and Seth Rollins intergender match with Lacey Evans and Baron Corbin. I wanted to know what yours and Seth's first reaction was upon learning that creative wanted to make your real-life relationship into a storyline. And ultimately, how did you enjoy the experience? Thank you.
Honestly, I was very apprehensive, just because I don't know that we needed to see. What I didn't want was everybody talking about the relationship, right? Like, what I wanted was two badasses, two people at the top of their game fighting side by side, not for the world to be reminded every 5 minutes that this is Becky Lynch's boyfriend, or that's Seth Rollins' girlfriend. Which, of course, they didn't do. They were the masters of subtlety. So for that reason, I was apprehensive. But when I thought about it, it's like, okay, no, we can make it. Well, one, we're going to make this a badass fight. It's going to be a great fight. And no matter what, like, you put me and Seth Rollins in a match, you know that you're going to get pure passion, and we're going to pull out all the stops. But as in terms of, like, having my relationship be the freaking front and center of that's not what I'm about. That's not what I've worked towards. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to work with Seth because he's the best in the business. Besides me. But I just those were my apprehensions. But working with him was awesome. He really is. He's the best. But like I said, I had those reservations.
There you go. Wei Ting speaking with Becky Lynch about the pairing of Becky with Seth Rollins, and I laughed out loud at her response when she very, very sarcastically noted WWE, the masters of subtlety, not wanting them to make everything about her being Seth's girlfriend. And I mean, we talked about it every single week. It almost became like it was a rule. Every time Becky and Seth were on screen, we had to mention that is Seth's girlfriend. That is Becky's boyfriend.
And it never ended.
And they did it tonight. They did it tonight. They're not even attached anymore on screen, and they're still doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it was certainly obnoxious for us to even watch. I can't imagine what it must have been like for her or Seth to constantly have to expose themselves like that to an audience. And thankfully, Becky is at a point, and she's kind of like, she's at a point now where she can speak incredibly truthfully and not really suffer any repercussions. And I felt like this was at least it seemed like a very genuine answer from her.
I think Seth has. I didn't think it was much difference. I think he's in relatively a same spot. I think any backlash towards Seth has been more so for his off-screen comments. But I really do feel that the 4 or 5 weeks of Becky and Seth, I think it did kind of cool off Becky a bit, and they're trying now to get her back to the role she was as kind of this rebel that is kind of more in that Austin vein that they had her pre-WrestleMania. But she is not a character to me. It is somewhat similar to when Steve Austin suddenly had an on-screen, his legitimate wife was now at Steve Austin's side. And I just don't think that Steve Austin was the character that needed a love interest. And I think that Becky falls in the same line as that she was not a character that needed to be paired with a love interest on television, even if real and they had an idea for this one pay-per-view. I think it did kind of affect her reactions.
I think any of your anti-heroes that we've seen in the past, whether it be Austin or like even recently with like Jon Moxley or Dean Ambrose, when he was like, they were teasing some stuff with Renee, but they never really went there. And I'm glad they really didn't, because it's not necessarily what we want out of our anti-heroes. And that extends to our female anti-heroes like a Becky Lynch.
So that entire conference call you can hear up if you are a member of the Post Wrestling Cafe. The full thing is up there. Just any of your overall thoughts that we didn't go over earlier, way of just kind of being on one of these calls and how Becky did.
Like I said, I thought she handled all the questions really well. She was incredibly patient. I felt with a lot of the maybe more, I don't know, the wide variety of questions. I'll be diplomatic in saying she did have an interesting comment about, somebody brought up about how there are a lot of comparisons to her and Conor McGregor, and she pretty much flat out like refuted them. Said, just because we're both Irish and we both have a lot of confidence, people make that lazy comparison. She says she's not Conor, she's not Stone Cold, and basically, that she's her own person is how she kind of put it. That was pretty interesting. She also gave some good responses about crediting several people for getting to her getting to where she is. And of course, we know what it's like for her to be in the ring with her boyfriend, and whether or not she got really mad when Lacey Evans was flirting with her boyfriend.
Oh, well, stop the presses. Okay, well, that is all of your news for tonight. You can go read all about this at postwrestling.com. Monday night, Raw took place from North Little Rock, Arkansas, at the Verizon Arena. Not just Little Rock, North Little Rock.
Well, you got to separate the two, of course. Maybe there was like...
You do.
There must have been like some type of Little Rock, Arkansas war that separated the North and the South, perhaps.
It started off, what a bizarre video to start this show off with. We had this montage of all the legendary champions in company history. Bruno Sammartino kicking off Raw. Hulk Hogan was showing, Austin, Undertaker, Cena, Rock, all of them with the WWE Championship. And then they cut to the announcement that was made in May of the introduction of the 24/7 title with a record scratch sound effects and into highlights with this silly music underneath, and the title that is not measured in weeks and months, but in hours and seconds. And it is redefining greatness.
I liked it a lot. I thought it was great. It was a nice, different start to the show. The record scratch sound effect is one that I know you quite enjoy, John. Works, you know, a little corny, but it totally works. And this is a corny championship and a corny title. And I thought they presented it in a really nice way.
I'm surprised a lot of the audience knows what a record scratch is, or even what a record is.
Are you kidding me? Like with Bray Wyatt, they have like a film like a film burning up. Like how, you know, they've got.
Maybe there's a high vinyl collecting audience out there that really appreciates such subtle sound effects.
Yeah, I imagine maybe like kids that are growing up, maybe they just think it's like some type of zipper.
The zipper sound effect.
Like an unzipping sound effect.
Yeah, but when you say unzip, they're probably thinking of a large file transfer.
Well, what would the modern day equivalent be to a record scratch? Like
an iPod or
they don't make noise though. They just like stop.
There could be a I was going to think of like, you know, when you'd get like a digital click on a CD, but people don't even listen to CDs anymore.
No.
So actually I listened to do you ever listen to Alan Cross's podcast? Because he's got the ongoing history as a podcast series now, so you can go and listen to like the last 5 years of episodes.
Oh wow.
He goes back, it's 5 years worth. It's not all
I don't know how he's managed to find topics to fill like 20 years of shows.
I've like downloaded a bunch of them, and I listened to one on the history of the CD, and it was just it's fascinating.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, I could listen to Alan Cross talk about anything.
He's one of my, honestly, like one of my idols getting to radio. It was like Alan Cross and the Law. Like those are the things I listened to.
I got to interview Alan Cross for a university project.
Me too.
Oh, yeah, we both
He's
did.
so incredibly kind with his time. Yeah. I got to work with Alan Cross actually on at Byte for a time, shooting his. Anyway,
oh, that's right. He was doing his show there.
Super tangent, everybody. Sorry.
For those that look up Alan Cross, you'll just go down a rabbit hole.
No relation to Nikki.
No, none. Michael Cole welcomes us to a historic Raw, beginning with a 24/7 title match that is a mosh pit match. A mosh pit.
A mosh pit match. Is this the first?
Yes, it is lumberjacks attending a concert.
That we know of, at least. I'm sure there have been mosh pit matches. This was not a mosh pit. This was nothing. Like, why even bring that? Why tarnish the legacy of the mosh pit by calling this match a mosh pit match?
I have no evidence of this, but this feels like one of those Paul Heyman things to take something traditional and just give it a new name. Like, well, he is not a manager; he's an advocate, and this is just simply calling this something different than a lumberjack match, or feeling a lumberjack is a outdated term.
I guess so. I guess the mosh pit is the modern day equivalent of the lumberjack.
Even a mosh pit kind of feels like something that is not as popular as it once was.
So I think a modern day equivalent would be like a World Star match.
Okay,
World Star.
I can go
World
with
Star.
that. Yes, that would have been better. You should be on this writing team, Way.
Of course, I should.
R-Truth and Carmella taking on Drake Maverick and Renee Michelle. Now, did they so this is a tag match for the 24/7 title? Is that right?
Correct. A mixed tag match where I think. Wait, did they say who would win the title?
No,
whether it be Renee.
I didn't recall that, and I didn't know what would happen. Like, what would happen if Drake Maverick pinned Carmella? Would he win the championship?
Great question.
maybe. It
we'll never
was
know.
nothing that deserved any kind of deeper analysis than what this was. The geeks around...
We also don't know how Renee Michelle escaped last week.
They had no explanation for what happened with Truth leaving in the limo with Renee. They were just back.
They just kind of resorted to like closing those threads. I mean, they could have done something online that I might have missed. But it's like they don't even really answer it because, like, you know, they've done like remember when R-Truth was stuck in that box and then he just showed up on Raw?
I feel that one was one that I complained about, and someone did send me something they did.
Okay, at a house show, there was like something where he mentioned it, but like it did not make the rounds. At least, you know, it was.
I feel even if you do something on YouTube to explain it, it needs some kind of quick recap on television or a mention. Yeah. Like it's, I'm not spending my days on WWE.com. Which side tangent? Did you watch Smackville on the weekend?
No.
I did not either. Okay. Finn Balor missed that show, but they're hopeful he'll be ready for Tuesday.
I'm really curious to know, again, like maybe the numbers for a show like that versus, say, an Evolve, you know, and what the demands are for more main roster, I would say, kind of house show content versus indie content. I
can't imagine it's all that high. I mean, I had no inclination to check this out over the weekend. And I heard no feedback to it either. Like I saw people on Twitter mentioning it, but there nothing that, you know, was noticeable.
I don't see it being something that would be maybe attractive to an audience that listens to our shows, but maybe your more general audience, or I don't want to say general, but your main roster audience that might go to house shows might have more interest, but I'm not sure.
So we get this tag match. Carmella is doing the rap with R-Truth during their intro. And then the Mosh Pitters included the Lucha House Party, EC3, Heath Slater, Bobby Roode, No Way Jose, Mojo Rawley, Eric Young, Titus O'Neil, Zack Ryder, Kurt Hawkins, and Mike Kanellis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all people who managed to get on TV, so guess it was a good day at the office.
I guess so. We had to include a mosh pit spot, so Drake got sent to the floor and he crowd surfed back into the ring.
Right.
I'm just going to skip here. Michelle and Carmella had a brief spot, and then Carmella slapped Drake, who then got hit with a face buster by R-Truth, who then just like dropped to his knees before pinning Drake Maverick. It just seemed like one step too many and just was a little awkward. And then pinned Maverick at a minute 54. And then all of the mosh pitters run in, jump onto R-Truth, and they pin him simultaneously. And Mike Kanellis gets out of the pile with the title and runs to the back.
Yeah. First, let me just say, I'm really happy for Drake Maverick. I continue to be ecstatic that, you know, the man went from being a manager of a tag team that really was not being utilized at all to now being, I would say, a pretty prominently featured character on WWE Raw.
No longer attached to a tag team that is not being used.
Yeah, he's got way more airtime than any of the Authors of Pain. Not only that, but getting his wife a job and making her a recurring character as well. I feel like Renee Michelle at this point has had more airtime than the Authors of Pain this year on Raw. So great job. I'm happy for both of them.
And she kept her name. They didn't rename Renee.
Very true. Yeah. It does make things a little confusing, I have to say. I mean, when it's fine. It's fine.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree that that's one of the Vince McMahon things about not having two people name the same thing that I never thought was like a crazy thing.
I would just say maybe it's because like Renee itself is a very distinctive name. So when I just say Renee, oh, there's only one Renee. It's well, Renee
I would
Young.
say this. I think it's, you know, when Shane Helms came, they had to have Gregory Helms because of Shane McMahon. I see that as less of a problem than when you're calling a match and your broadcast partner is being referred to as Renee while the match is being called. And I think that is where it gets just, you don't know who necessarily, are you referring to a question being asked to the broadcast partner, or are you describing the person in the ring?
very minor quibble, and I think that's really the least of our concerns when we're talking about a segment like this. But it was a nothing match. Carmella and Renee, the other Renee, they barely touched. Like, it was hardly an intergender match, and really just a backdrop to set up this title change.
So Mike runs backstage, and they chase after him. He locks himself in a room, and then pregnant Maria appears, and she is holding her. She's holding her side as though she's in pain.
Okay, do you think she's really showing that much?
Maria?
Yeah. Like, okay, she's showing right now, but like, could it have been that quick? It doesn't feel like it's a little quick for the bump to be that big.
Well, she's been pregnant for, she mentioned she just reached 12 weeks. So she's so she's surpassed the first trimester.
Okay, and is that from your experience, John? Because I don't have any, but is that did it look like somebody who was 12 months pregnant?
Listen, watching on TV is if you knew she was pregnant, I think you can look and you can make that conclusion. But it would not be the case that you would absolutely assume that.
Right, 12 weeks. I meant to say, by the way.
Yes. So Maria is stating she's in pain. She needs her husband, and they clear the way. And she starts lambasting Michael Kanellis and demanding that he open the door. But Michael Kanellis is pretty sharp because he thinks it's Carmella pretending to be Maria. And Maria threatens to kick Mike in his vagina if he does not open the door. And this is when Vince McMahon came on screen and announced that the sophisticated product would be starting after the commercial break.
We've evolved, everybody. We've evolved past that.
That crap. I don't know if TNT would stand for it, to be quite honest, and things of that nature.
Yeah. I mean, listen, for anybody who's been clamoring for the glory days of the Attitude Era, I guess here we are, everybody. It's risque. Vagina was mentioned on TV. Shit gets
so shocking.
Yeah. Raw is great again, everybody. We could say vagina now. Anyway, so
I know I'm going to sound all fucking PC here and stuff, but I've like always hated this kind of insult. It's the same as, no different than.
Well, the whole story is
the insult is like the insult is you're a woman. You know what I mean? I hate that kind of thing, especially for this company. I don't know.
Yeah,
this was so lame, dude. It's like it's the absolute lowest form to try and sound edgy, and I think it comes off so lame when you're so clearly just reaching and trying.
Well, the whole story is just about how the wife feels that the husband is not a man, and therefore you get great lines like this.
Wonderful. So that was not the end of Maria. She would be all over this show. So she was let in to the magic room, and they cut back to the announcers, and Renee recommends that not happen. Thus, Kanellis kicking Mike in the vagina. Gauntlet match follows that way. Rey Mysterio, Cesaro, Sami Zayn, Andrade, and Ricochet were announced for the Gauntlet, and the winner would take on AJ Styles for the United States title at SummerSlam.
Talk about a palate cleanser from the last segment, from the way this show started, going from the 24/7 match to like whatever Maria Kanellis was doing this week. Now you're showing me Rey Mysterio versus Cesaro. Now you have my attention.
Yes, and I think what was most notable about this was they wrestled through the commercial break, and they were not the only match to do so. And I'm sure we'll find out for sure, but this felt like, at minimum, a relaxing of this rule, if not the outright elimination of it.
Pacing of the show was so much better, the best it's been in weeks, without a doubt. We had multiple matches on the show go through a commercial break, and wouldn't you know it, the crowd was incredibly hot coming back from break almost every time. And even like some of the other segments, I felt like they were of varying lengths. Some of these were just backstage angles that felt like very brief segments, only to go back to commercial, so that perhaps they could have extended the actual in-ring segments themselves. So I'm not exactly sure what was changed, but certainly there was they continued to experiment with all that.
I thought the key was the fact that they didn't overdo it. It wasn't like this was going back to, Raw's pre the commercial rule, where you would get tons of matches that would just go through the commercial breaks. They were judicious, and it was the Gauntlet match, and they only did it for the Mysterio Cesaro match. It's not like they did it for all the Gauntlet matches. And then they did another one for the lengthy tag match. And the tag match greatly benefited from not being crammed into one segment. They couldn't have done that match in one segment.
I think they must have learned from the women's four-way that was so poorly received several weeks ago that you only extend these in-ring matches when they're guaranteed to be hot matches, when you have guys that are going to work fast and just deliver excitement bell to bell throughout the course of 12 minutes. And certainly they picked two matches that you really would have expected that from.
So Mysterio and Cesaro, it starts off with AJ Styles watching the television set backstage, just chilling. Ray and Cesaro, they had about as good a match, I think, as you were going to get. And I was expecting this to be a rush job, so I was pleasantly surprised by this, because I was thinking, man, this match in any other company, people would be salivating over, and I feel like I'm going to get 3 minutes of these two, and it's going to be nothing.
You got three times that, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. This one, I didn't have the exact time because we did have a commercial in there, but they probably went around 10 minutes or so. There was the sliding splash from Ray that had this kind of awkward landing because it looked like Cesaro was a little further out, but he did make it.
They also did the electric chair, over the top rope spot that we've seen Ray do recently, since in his new run. And Cesaro, I thought, pulled it off. He and Cesaro pulled it off as beautifully as I've seen him do it with anybody.
He goes over, he's on Cesaro's shoulders. They fly over the top, and Ray stays on the shoulders. It was very cool. We saw a springboard Rana into the ring. 619 gets avoided by Cesaro, and then a sliding head scissors sends Cesaro to the floor. This is where they go through the commercial break, come back. Ray has been powerbombed into the post and hit with an uppercut during the commercial.
He lost his mohawk somehow in the commercial break.
We had a hair stipulation end in the commercial break. Ray lost his hair during the commercial break.
Wow. So he's a wrestler.
He could have headlined the CMLL show in September.
He can put up his hair and his mask. Wow.
Man, it was a very...
he lost his mask at the end of this too.
He lost everything in this match. He lost...
he only had his pants by the end.
That's it. Well, SummerSlam. A pants match. Yes. There's a senton off the top. Reverse cross body comes off the middle into a Cesaro uppercut. Stops the neutralizer, and then Cesaro lifts him up for a razor's edge, but it's countered. Cesaro gets sent into the corner. He blocks Ray's Hurricane Rana from the top, and then Ray turns a wheelbarrow into a bulldog off the turnbuckle, lands the 619, splash from the top, and pins Cesaro. So, I thought this was a really fun match between these two, and exceeded what I expected for Ray and Cesaro on a WWE television show.
I thought this was so great. Even if technically it was just part of a match, even this part of a match was better than I can't tell you the last time I felt so happy watching a match on Raw, because it's been filled with so much bullshit. Even something like Ricochet versus AJ was just filled with constant restarts because of whatever commercial requirement that they had to fulfill. Here, even though there was a commercial interrupting it, in my mind, these two had wrestled the best match off screen that I couldn't see. And this audience came back with a big reaction. So in my mind, this was a 10-minute solid match that, that was excellent, I thought.
Sami Zayn runs out, and while Ray is recovering, Zayn attacks him, and he's pulled back by the referee, and he sets up for the haluva kick, and he misses it. Ray goes for a schoolboy and didn't grab him, so they had to improvise with an inside cradle, and he pinned Sami Zayn in less than 30 seconds, and Sami Zayn was out. Poor Sami. This Kevin Owens push has had one casualty, and it's Sami Zayn.
Yeah, remember the electric chair? Remember that whole thing?
Several weeks ago, he Instagrammed a photo of the electric chair, and I had completely forgotten about it. The electric chair that was sentenced to death via the segment.
that is certainly in the running, I would say, for maybe one of the worst gimmicks of the year. But this was it was Zayn, who's already pretty much at the bottom rung of like kind of your mid carders who are regularly on TV, so he can take the loss here. This was essentially kind of like a Yano spot, right? In a condensed version of the G1 in this Gauntlet match, where Ray basically gets to add to his tally, and they can give him a bit of a break and extra momentum heading into the Almas match.
We took a break. They plugged SmackDown and heavily promoting the King's Court with Jerry Lawler and Trish Stratus. It's in Memphis, and Randy Orton addressing his match with Kofi Kingston for SummerSlam. So, yeah, it's Jerry Lawler was all over like Memphis media today, and then they're doing SmackDown tomorrow night. So just a very obviously a trying week, and he's going to be on TV Tuesday night.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you'll shoot their angle with Trish for SummerSlam on that show. Rey Mysterio versus Andrade was the next match, and they brought up their feud that just disappeared several months ago. Andrade had the advantage at the beginning. He was attacking Rey on the floor. Rey went for a cabrata, but got caught and hit with the Three Amigos. Andrade landed on his feet and hit a standing moonsault. Rey then hit an enziguri. The 619 gets caught into a spinning backbreaker and the hammerlock DDT. And Andrade pins Rey and then continues stomping him. And this was awkward because as Andrade went for the cover, right as he's about to hit 3, Michael Cole yells, "No!" And he tries to explain that he thought Rey was hurt. And it just came off as a kind of clumsy call for the finish. And then afterwards, with Andrade beating down Rey, he tears off Rey's mask. And like, this was a serious tearing of the mask. And then Ricochet ran down to stop I guess Rey being pantsed as well because he's lost everything else. But I'll say this, like, I'm all for Rey and Andrade if you're just going to throw them out onto SummerSlam. But God, that feels like just a very last minute serious stipulation to throw in there. But I guess they're just going to pick this up and do something with these two after kind of ignoring this feud for the last few months with Rey's injury and moving on to Samoa Joe.
Yeah, I think certainly, the mask ripping suggests that they might, build to something beyond what we just saw here, but I'm not 100% sure that that's what they're building towards. It might have just been a spot in a match, but neither man have a program thus far. If anything, maybe a kickoff match might be in store, or a TV match next week, I suppose. But I thought the finish as well was pretty anticlimactic. I don't know if it was maybe designed to elicit a bigger reaction or not, but I was expecting a bit more of a comeback from Rey before Andrade just hit the DDT. I suppose maybe they just felt like to give the straightforward win for Andrade, but I thought the mask ripping was actually awesome. Like, built some good heat for him before Ricochet came down.
And then the final match was Ricochet and Andrade, and you could notice Ricochet had his left elbow bandaged up from the infection that kept him off of Raw last week. And we go back. AJ's been standing in front of this TV the entire time. Standing.
Well, that's what's so unusual. You what? Standing? He probably sits all day, driving town to town.
Well, he's I guess stretching out his spine, working out his posture. Andrade goes to the floor. Vega distracts Ricochet and then grabs Ricochet's leg, allowing Andrade to knock him off the floor. This drew a lot of boos. Andrade stopped the comeback, hit the double knees into the corner. Hammerlock DDT gets countered with an inside cradle. And then Andrade landed the discus elbow. There's a reverse Rana from Ricochet for a 2 count. And then knocks Andrade from the turnbuckle, hits him with the 630, and wins in 6 minutes, 15 seconds. Ricochet going to SummerSlam to take on AJ Styles.
I thought some really great action in this whole Gauntlet match, and a great way really to kind of set up a match that I think everybody was expecting anyway. But in the process, they filled a lot of TV time with some quality wrestling. I think it's been proven that WWE certainly knows how to book the TV Gauntlet match. Obviously, there's the famous Rollins match. Even Kofi, like both in the form of the elimination and an actual Gauntlet match on SmackDown. They know how to fill their TV time with interesting Gauntlet matches that manage to get a number of people over. In this case, I thought they set up potentially something with Rey and Andrade. Certainly, I thought Rey and Cesaro looked amazing. I want to see that match again if they want to extend that feud. I think Ricochet comes out of this with a bit more momentum. Andrade got some good heat coming out of this as well. So to me, this was like almost a reminder that you have some of the world's best talent in this locker room. And it was really nice to see them finally all get utilized effectively here without stupid resets. Too many stupid resets, I suppose.
Kayla then got into the ring to interview Ricochet and talks about Ricochet talks about beating Joe for the title and said, people can only believe what they see. And when he beats AJ Styles and holds the title, everyone will believe, and so will I.
Believe what? Like, didn't he already win the title? He already had the title, and didn't he actually already beat AJ?
Yes.
So
then he lost it. Then he lost to AJ. So
nobody believes that he could beat AJ twice and win the belt again. Is that it?
I guess that's what we have to be doubting, and we need to see to believe.
Well,
All I could think when this promo was over, that imagining this guy last week in the ring with the Click and DX, and he being given the microphone to yell at the top of his lungs, if you ain't down with that, we've got two words for you. We believe.
Yeah, no, he doesn't necessarily have that attitude, does he?
Did you ever watch that Chronicle with him a few weeks ago?
I have not, no.
I didn't see it either, but I will guarantee you he's a way more interesting individual in that setting than he comes across on Raw.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's no secret it's probably the weakest part of his game. I don't think he's that bad, though, that, like, you can't work with it. I think he sounds decent. If anything, I consider him quite average. Not attention-grabbing, but I don't think he's bad. But in-ring is where he kind of makes up for those shortcomings because he's outstanding in-ring. As long as they can focus on that, I think he could get by with what he has right now.
Mike is in this room with Maria. God knows what they were discussing for the last entirety of the Gauntlet match, but now we cut to them in the heat of their conversation. Mike says that Maria can finally be proud of him and look at him with dignity and respect. And Maria tells him to get onto his back, like you usually do. And I guess they were like playing up, she's like pregnant / has like a dominatrix role. And she is going to pin him so that her unborn child has a champion as a parent. So Mike lays down on his back. She stands on him and gives up the championship to Maria. And she becomes the first ever pregnant champion.
That's right. She used a move here that I like to term the cuckold.
Oh, God. You should have been writing this. She walked.
What?
Go on.
No. I was getting into my analysis after that brilliant zinger.
See, I thought you were going to say that this finish was very heelish.
Heelish?
She pinned her using her.
Oh, that's good too.
Yeah. That's the difference between you and me, Way. She walks out, and I can't say like this is a
joke title.
It's a joke title. I don't care about the seriousness. I'm talking about it just as a heel act for Maria. Like, okay. It is kind of clever that you've put the title on someone where I think the audience legitimately has no idea how this woman can lose the title. I will say this, like a tiny thing. I wish they didn't do those silly phantom finishes last week, because that kind of just gives you an out.
Oh, are you kidding me, John? Are you suggesting that the booking last week might have tarnished the credibility of these?
That's not. You're not even listening to me. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is the heat here is the actual. This woman has to lose this title somehow, and they're not going to do anything physical with her. So I wouldn't have introduced phantom finishes last week when that's kind of the cliffhanger here is how will Maria possibly lose this title? And they've given you several options last week that I just would have avoided. And that's the whole heat of this thing is how can they take this title off of Maria?
When you say phantom finishes, you mean like something like her stepping into a limousine and then coming out without the belt?
Yes.
Yeah. Something tells me
Patterson and Briscoe.
something tells me with a storyline like this, I would expect that they would have a better explanation than simply Maria walks into the room, you hear a bunch of noises, and she comes out without the belt. I feel like because they're setting this up to be an actual bit of a conundrum, I think it's on them to like come up with something a bit more clever than just that. Whereas I don't feel the same level of importance put onto somebody like DiBiase.
Well, we'll see what they do with this. Because like they're not going to do anything physical here, obviously.
Yeah. So the belt goes from a guy who can't have sex with his wife to another
woman
guy
who regrets having sex.
Yeah, to another guy who can't have sex with his wife, and then to a wife who won't have sex with her husband.
Right.
Pretty much sums up Raw for the past several weeks.
Yes. She comes out hoisting up the title. All the guys are out there. She goes up to Titus, who was the first champion. That the trivia answer no one would know, and says, "What are you willing to do to become a 2-time champion?" And she knows that no one will go near her, which isn't a bad gimmick, and yells that she has an OBGYN appointment on Thursday, and if any of them want to try to come and beat her at her OBGYN appointment.
So who's under that OBGYN doctor's mask?
Oh, God. Maybe it's Dr. Heine.
I think that would be a different type of doctor, don't you think?
Well, it's been 14 years. They may have been reassigned.
Right. He went back to medical school and got his other degree.
They showed their face on Raw in 2005, and it was they could never possibly be used again by that hospital. So they've had to completely have a career change. And now the WWE's returned.
Like operating on I think this level of like, childish humor. I actually like this. I like that they're combining the two most ridiculous storylines that are going on Raw right now between Kanellis and also the 24/7 championship into one storyline. I'm actually kind of curious to see how they get the belt off of her.
Yeah, I think it's something that will run its course. But in terms of like, Maria's very good in this role, even if you're not a big fan of like what the actual angle is. I think that she is clearly this has been her shining role so far in this company, and is a spotlight on her.
It's been the only role, like on TV at least.
A moment of bliss was next with Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, and Alexa congratulates Maria for breaking down yet another barrier for women. She's just doing miracles for the gender. Nikki had goosebumps watching the Raw reunion last week and Steve Austin's speech, and Alexa pointed out Austin calling everyone family, but Ziggler betrayed his family when he super kicked Shawn Michaels last week on SmackDown. And Alexa was appalled and said it ruined the feeling of the Raw reunion. And another performer that broke her moral compass is Becky Lynch. It seemed like a very odd segue, like they had to like sandwich in this Dolph Ziggler story to remind everybody of it. It really just didn't feel like it fit here.
I think they're trying to portray Dolph's attack on Shawn as this like company, like world shaking event. Oh my God.
So, yeah.
How could he touch Shawn Michaels? The same Shawn Michaels that got involved in a physical altercation on that episode of Raw, by the way. But like they're treating like off of this attack on Shawn, he's got a match with Rollins. They booked him in a match with who was it? Was it Miz or Kofi for tomorrow? He's got a match on SmackDown.
Dolph has a match with Finn, providing he's cleared to wrestle.
And they're like positioning that as like, Rollins is out to get to avenge Shawn, and now Finn Balor's out to avenge Shawn as well. Like, suddenly it's like touching Shawn Michaels, even though it was like
a super kick way.
Who attacked who first?
It was Ziggler attacked Miz, and then I think Michaels went to tend to him, and that's when he turned around and got hit with the super kick. Okay, all right. I believe.
Well, the most evil thing I've ever seen a wrestler do. But yeah, it's just like it's a major event. It's a catastrophe. Shawn Michaels was super kicked.
I mean, Ziggler could have thrown him through a barbershop window.
That would have been great.
Can you imagine that angle happening today? Like,
yeah, I think it would be met with like,
it would have a hashtag. It would be,
it would not register at all today.
No, people would be numb to it.
Yeah.
It's like no one brings up when Jericho did very similar with Shawn and threw him through the Geritron. Like it was a complete recreation of the barbershop angle, but I don't think anyone would remember that.
If it was
not offhand.
If it was today and if they wanted to get like that same level of traction, I think Shawn would have had to tweet at Marty some type of comment about like him not being able to draw, you know, or like making some comment about how many 5-star matches have you had, Marty?
Yeah. That
would be the barbershop window.
I'm just imagining this. No, it's serious. And we'll get into the big angle later tonight, but it's like, imagine that in a different era. It would be something that you would remember forever. And this will be something that, you know, it's just a different world where angles don't register because there's so many of them that Brock and Rollins, I would imagine in 4 weeks, you would have to remind people what happened tonight.
Yeah, maybe.
So Alexa throws to footage of Natalya from earlier in the day working out in the ring with a pair of women as well as Fit Finlay. And they are drilling defenses for the disarmer. So Becky enters the ring, knees Finlay, and
calls him a traitor.
And then puts Natalya into the disarmer. And they came back, and the crowd is chanting Becky. So they were with her here. And a lot of people were complaining that Becky really came across like a real asshole here. But I mean, hey, but this guy's supposed to be impartial.
How did she turn into the man in the first place? By like doing this type of shit. She turned on Charlotte just like a heel would. And the fans loved her for it. So to me, they're just getting back to the basics of what made, you know, the man in the first place. Who
allowed her to get into the Royal Rumble when she came out?
Finlay, wasn't it?
It was Fit. She said, "Let me in."
So it made sense here by calling him a traitor. Clearly,
I really didn't mind this. That
I like.
Imagine way that you and I were going to fight. Okay.
Yeah.
And
okay. Oh, Greg Jackson. Okay, training John Jones, and then like maybe having to train like some another
Rashad Evans.
Sure. Yeah.
Rashad got pissed. Well, I was going to use the analogy that you and I were training we were going to face each other, and I know Way's got a deadly triangle, and Elliot at Open Mat is seen working with me to fend off your triangle.
I would.
He's got a secret to it.
Obviously.
You know what? You'd probably come over and you'd kick Elliot and call him a traitor, and then you'd put the triangle on me and you'd fucking mount me.
You damn right I would.
So, I mean, if you just see this happening, I think you can sympathize with Becky here.
I thought this was perfectly logical. You know, I could see people maybe criticizing how heelish Becky came across, especially now that she's like trying to claim herself to be Canada's new hero. That's like, she's even hashtagging that. I
think they're going for that they understand Natalya is going to be the crowd favorite in this match. So give Becky an edge going into this that gives the audience a reason to boo Becky, cheer Natalya. I think they're running towards that. I think that they know exactly what you're doing when you're putting Natalya in this match in Toronto. So
perhaps
do the story justice.
Perhaps, but now outside of Canada, how does Becky come across?
I don't think it matters. To be honest, I think if it's I like the idea that, they're going to Canada. Of course Becky's not going to be cheered. So
I think she will be
for one night. You think so?
Oh yeah.
I think it's going to be mixed. I think it's going to be a pretty good I think the crowd is going to be split, maybe more towards Natalya, but I think it's going to enhance the match because the fans are not going to be sitting on their hands for that match.
Yeah, I think it'll be a really hot match, especially with the stipulation that they announced.
Oh, well, it was revoked, though, remember?
Oh, never mind. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alexa condemns Becky, which I think was a key part in the audience being behind Becky here, is that you have Alexa running her down for it. Nikki thinks that Becky wants to take Natalya out before SummerSlam, and Alexa is going to take Becky down tonight. So Becky appears on the screen, tells Alexa not to injure yourself turning around too quickly, and says that she can say what she wants for free right now, but you're going to pay for it later. And asks if Nikki came from Scotland to be a coffee maker, and there's nowhere to run when you've done me wrong.
All right. Yeah. Sounded good.
This was immediately transitioned into the Usos coming out and cutting their promo as they go down the ramp. And I swear I am not making this up. As Jimmy Uso is on screen, up pops up a graphic promoting The Fast and the Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw.
Oh, it got way more absurd.
It got way more. I watched this and I was like, I can see how that slipped through the cracks. But then the next thing that happened several segments later, I don't understand. And man, the way
it's
they're
perfect,
really,
dude. It's too perfect. I mean, even if the guy did not get into the trouble he did last week, the fact that John Cena brought it back up on the show itself, the fact that these two have had DUIs, and then the next show you have these two same DUI dudes promoting a movie about cars, is hilarious.
I don't find it funny. I think it's like I
think it's absurd. Really,
it's absurd. I thought also the fact that at the end of this show, Jimmy Uso is one of the featured stars. Like, I don't know what kind of message you take from this, that it's clearly, it's not only something that they're going to completely sweep under the rug and ignore, but seriously, like it's the opposite of a punishment. We're pushing this guy even more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you asked them, they would tell you that these were just plans that they had lined up several months or several weeks ahead, and they're just, to change them at this point might be a little bit difficult. Yeah, but maybe it does
let's not let drinking and driving get in the way of plans. We got plans. We got TV to write here. Can't let a DUI screw anything up. So we did get our 3-way tag match with the Revival defending the Raw tag titles against the Usos and Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows. The Revival also sporting new T-shirts that are yellow.
Oh,
nice.
okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yellow shirts, yeah. Wait. I feel like I've seen these ones. I
hadn't noticed them before, but maybe they're.
I think they're
new.
ones with like a really funny caption on them. It says, yeah.
What
it's
does
a
it
shirt
say?
that says "Top guys doing top guy things" as they are pictured on the front, wearing a jacket in their Speedo trunks.
Well, we learned in the segment earlier, Mike Kanellis is a bottom guy.
Yes, we did learn that.
The Revival's in control. Michael Cole got so excited because a sleeper hold was applied by Scott Dawson and said that this could lead to new champions before realizing the Revival were the tag team champions.
I don't blame him. Like, did you know?
I did know because, I mean, they did do the introductions with the titles and such. I would give him the pass if he had screwed up Raw and SmackDown because I would not be able to decipher most of these people, which brand they're on.
Yeah, it's getting more complex by the day.
No Gallows and Anderson throughout the first 5 minutes, and then Jay gets thrown to the floor, and we get a commercial break. So they go through that. Anderson is in the ring after they come back, in control of Jay, and we cut to the back. Dude, AJ Styles is still standing in the exact same spot. He's been there the whole show.
He found a comfortable spot and decided to park himself there for the duration of the 3 hours, evidently.
AJ had a hell of a night. He got to the arena today. He got his rundown and was like, cutaway to the back, third cutaway to the back, arranging sushi, yelling on top of a desk. Go home.
He did a great job with the sushi, though.
He did get a brief promo, although Kayla pretty much did the whole thing for him. He just got to celebrate with Gallows and Anderson. But what a night for AJ Styles. Great work if you can get it. Long heat spot until Jimmy gets the tag. He attacks Wilder and Dawson. They roll through on a crossbody, but then Wilder gets sent into Anderson on the apron. Dawson yanks down the hair. The Revival hit the Steinerizer, and then Anderson broke up the pinfall. Dawson's in with Anderson and delivers a vertical suplex as both fly over the top to the floor. This is when things really picked up. Wilder hit a tornado DDT to Gallows off the barricade to the floor. Jimmy dove to the floor. Jay then got stopped on the top turnbuckle, and it featured Jay with a superplex to Dawson onto all four men on the floor. Everyone's down. Back into the ring. Shatter machine onto Jay. A spine buster to Jay. and then the Magic Killers hit to Jimmy as Gallows pins Jimmy, and Gallows and Anderson win the Raw tag titles. A very strong match, in particular, I would say the final 3 to 4 minutes.
Yeah, this was, maybe it might still be the lack of 2 to 3 minute matches that's still making me quite easily impressed on this particular episode of Raw, but I really enjoyed this as well. Really fast, high energy the whole way through, great coordination between the three teams for all those spots. And in the end here, they managed to successfully transfer the belts from one heel team to another without two heel teams pinning one another. And to me, it shows that they're serious about the OC, and something like this would kind of like increase my expectations, I think, of the Raw tag team division. I have a bit more faith after seeing something like this and seeing that they're willing to let teams like the Usos with the Revival, and just coming up is the Viking Raiders and maybe even potentially the Street Profits, all kind of making their way towards the tag team division. We could potentially be looking at a bit of a resurgence, but of course, it remains to be seen. The fact that, the OC managed to win the belts without that much of a struggle for them maybe is a bit of a negative. But at the very least, I think we know that the Raw talent is certainly there. No pun intended.
Yeah. I wonder if their new finisher is going to be rebranded the Magic Contract Killer.
Ooh. The Magic Contract Killer. Yeah.
The contract signing, maybe.
You sign that contract, you might find yourself with a belt, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, the 5-year commitment. There's lots of names they can come up with. Yeah. Styles is backstage setting up food and champagne. Kayla goes to interview him, and then Anderson and Gallows show up. Styles loses his goddamn mind. He just hit the jackpot. I just lost his mind. Got onto the desk. Anderson and Gallows are chanting Nature Boy at him.
Man, if he pulled out the Nature Boy impression on TV, I would have lost it. This would have made his day totally worth it.
Yeah, mini Nature Boy, AJ Styles, circa 2010. And that was it. Gallows and Anderson are your new tag champions.
Yeah, so the OC, standing strong, all three with belts. And we'll see what they do with that.
All champions, yes. They did a recap of the Raw reunion and Dolph Ziggler destroying the family via super kick. Viking Raiders defeated a team called Cole Carter and Johnny James. They mentioned the Viking Raiders were in Denmark this past weekend for Viking battle training.
Well, that's great.
Sounds fun. They won with the Viking experience in 1:24 while the announcers tried to figure out who was who.
Yeah. They're not getting huge reactions for these squash matches, but I don't really consider that to be a failure at all. To me, they're just kind of waiting in the background before getting an actual program.
I think it's probably many factors that have affected the Authors of Pain, but the Viking Raiders probably don't help that they are now in the role of the monster team squashing guys, which I don't think you necessarily have to be limited to one team with that role, but it just feels like whatever the authors were kind of positioned to be, the Viking Raiders are now.
Well, we know they kind of have a formula to book these giants, whether it be Braun Strowman or Rowan and Harper. The Bludgeon Brothers is what they're called, and Authors of Pain. And now these guys, they kind of have their tech.
Who's this Luke Harper you speak of?
Yeah, I think he wrestled on Access last we spoke. Yeah, this is kind of their method of pushing these monster guys. Maybe it's a little overdone. I'm not sure. I would still really prefer to see these guys as baby faces because I think the division is in need of baby faces. So
I swear to God, every week we do a Viking Raiders recap. You mention the fact that they're heels, and every single week I respond in my head with, "Oh yeah."
Yeah,
it never clicks with me that they are a team. Literally, they could just be baby faces next week. No one would bat an eye.
Yeah,
it's they don't have any definable traits. And if anything, you watch these matches, of course they're just killing guys. That's really fun to watch.
Yeah. I would just do the pivot without really any storyline explanation. Just make them baby faces.
It's not even, you don't even really have to do anything different with them.
Yeah.
They play to the crowd. It's they're presented as baby faces, even though we've seen instances where, they are by default a heel team. The Street Profits are here. They react to all the stuff going on tonight. Ricochet winning, new champions. Dawkins asks why Maria won the 24/7 title and insinuates that he's into her. And then Montez Ford asks if he's the father, and he says not to joke about that. Dawkins isn't ready for his own fam. Seth Rollins walks in.
Man, I see him walk into this scene, and I just think, oh, man, this is not good.
Dad is here. That's what this felt like. He comes in and tries to hang out with Ford and Dawkins, who I believe he refers to as Dog. And then Dawkins says the locker room is behind him. And Ford goes to do the burn it down catchphrase, but Rollins, like, so overly delivers, like, no, no, no. And then all three of them yell, burn it down. I never want to hear this catchphrase again in my life. And this is the last way I would want to position Seth Rollins. He came across so uncool here.
Yeah.
And then later, I don't think it's a coincidence that we see him like this. And then when he's getting beaten down several segments later, there's a one more time chant at him. He just came across like such a geek here with the Street Profits that come across very cool.
Yeah, I don't know what the original intent was behind a segment like this. Was it to give the rub to the Street Profits, or was it to give maybe more of a cool rub to Seth Rollins? I
think this was to make Seth Rollins come across as like likable and one of the guys.
No, it did not work out that way.
No.
Like, he came across like, Hot Topic in this. I thought he ended up looking like super corny, but it was not as
There's
bad.
a way to use Seth Rollins, but it's like this and like the segments with Becky, like there's a clear way of how not to use this guy. And we're seeing it.
He was great before, I would say, for a majority of I think the past year, when he was just like cutting that babyface promo, doing a great job. But ever since like they're starting to inject like the comedy in him, and certainly all the Becky stuff totally derailed him. And I don't necessarily feel like they've really kind of recovered, at least not with segments like this.
Like, to me, dude, John Cena is Richard Pryor in comparison when it comes to pulling off comedy.
Cena's willing to make fun of himself. He's a lot more self-deprecating, and Rollins does not have that same quality.
Yeah, like Rollins is like he cannot be doing comedy. He's just not very good at it at all. He's very bad at it.
Yeah.
So you shy away from stuff that people can't do. Like, this is not a prerequisite. He does not need to be doing comedy shit. And then the director had all of the laughs here, because we go from this and they cut to Becky. And Michael Cole screams, well, Seth Rollins is that woman's boyfriend. And the tone was like, that's who she ended up with. I don't know. Like, she's dating
she could do better.
That guy. So Becky took on Alexa Bliss, non-title match. I won't lie, this third hour, like I started to feel it here as we got like back-to-back Becky matches. And I didn't think either of them were all that strong. The first one, they go about 7 minutes. Corey Graves got in a joke that Renee is on an ego trip after Twitter was so nice to her on Sunday, if you were following this.
Were they?
Renee was... Did you follow this?
Not really.
So, I felt bad for Renee. She puts out like a completely innocent tweet about something about like guys wearing baseball hats that tuck their ears in to the hat, and that guys need to stop that. So, inevitably, like... God forbid you tweet anything and you're a WWE performer. So people come at her and just knock her commentary in response to that, and just tell her what a terrible announcer she is.
My first question is, how many guys are out there that tuck their ears into their hats?
Oh, I've seen it. It is a partial thing. I mean, I've never done it. It's like, it's very uncomfortable, I would imagine.
Okay. But I mean, clearly she was just like being entertaining, trying to be entertaining on Twitter. If you can get upset, like, to me, like, if I did that, please make fun of me. I think it's ridiculous. Anyway, don't tweet me, guys, if you wear your hats like that.
She gets attacked here, and she comes back, and she's like somewhat defensive here. And not even defensive, but she comes back and to all these criticisms and says, here's the truth. I know I'm not great on commentary, but it's my job. I try to get better each week. People love to tell me how bad I am, as if I think I'm great at it. So should I just quit? What would that say about me? not easy to learn a skill on a gigantic global TV show. And, you come back with a response like that, you're going to have a lot of people backing you up because Renee is like an incredibly likable person.
I don't even think she's bad. Like, if anything, like she's certainly not bad. There are far worse on like within that company.
I think that there's absolutely room for fair criticism. She is not great and she is not awful. Like that, I think either would be unfair to categorize her as, and I think she would be the first to admit that. I think to a larger part, though, it's just very toxic that you have to deal with this stuff, but that kind of comes with the territory of being on Twitter.
In 2019, it is certainly just the case.
That is what it is, and it's you
either shut it out yourself or you learn how to deal with it,
That's it. That's it. Twitter isn't changing. People aren't going to be any less shittier. It's just, that's what it's going to be like. And it's unfortunate that that's what it is, but Twitter is not a necessity. We have such a reliance on Twitter, and I think we come up with excuses to stay on Twitter and keep Twitter, and really that comes down to yourself. And I include myself in this. I really feel like it's a kind of a cop-out when I say that, like, I need to be on Twitter for job stuff. I feel like I could be just fine without it. And one day I might just completely disappear from it.
I think you can
just be gone.
I think you can enjoy Twitter fine if you just follow the right people and just block the rest.
Yeah. I'm getting into more of a block. I used to be a muter, and now it's like, nah, blocking can be enjoyable too. I'm fine with that. But anyway, so that was the Twitter side, and a lot of people came to her defense, and rightly so. She's someone that I think you can see. I think as a backstage announcer, she was phenomenal, and she's literally learning this on the spot, and I think a lot of people have sympathy for that, and also knowing the structure of being a broadcaster in the WWE and what that comes with, as opposed to any other wrestling company.
I don't know if Jerry Lawler in his prime could be better than Renee Young right now, like with the type of production that I think somebody like Renee Young probably has to work with. It's just a different world, and I don't expect anybody to be that great under this kind of microscope.
So then we continue the match here. Bliss is blocking the disarmer several times. She drives her knees into Becky's sternum twice, including a standing moonsault. Becky comes back with clotheslines and then goes for this spin kick that does not land, but hits a second one and hits a Bexploder. Bliss is favoring her ankle, and the referee pulls Becky away, and Bliss is just dramatically crying. Like, it's so over the top that you can't possibly take it seriously. And Nikki's checking on her. The trainer helps Bliss to the floor, and Mike Rome announces that she cannot continue, and Becky wins the match in 7 minutes. I think it could have been just a little more subtle, and people would have had a bit more doubt. Or if you really wanted to really push things, she could have been like teasing a concussion.
Right.
Or is that too close?
Yeah, maybe too much. And it's also a tougher thing to sell,
Right. I mean, it was clear this was an angle, and you knew where this was going, and it was not a very big angle either, so you don't have to put too much credence into it. So Nikki gets into Becky's face, just is screaming at her, and we come back with a match between Becky and Nikki, and Bliss is just seated on the floor with her ankle elevated. Becky drops her from the corner turnbuckle and hits the manhandle slam to win the match in 2.5 minutes.
What a terrible name.
The manhandle slam.
All right. Anyway, so their plan, Alexa and Nikki's plan, was to wrestle like a 10-minute match, pretend that you're injured partway through that match so that you can have that match called and you essentially lose that match, only so that Nikki can challenge in the event that Becky would assume that Becky was going to accept the challenge, only for Nikki to wrestle part of that match just so Alexa could reveal that the injury was fake so that they could double team. All this to double team Becky Lynch.
Well, you see, Alexa went into this and she realized, once I'm in trouble, I'm out. Really, it should have been Bob Sapp that was out there. Maybe Nikki should have been in Bob Sapp's corner. Like, when that guy would sense trouble, he was getting out of a fight. And that's what Alexa did here. So maybe she went in optimistic she could beat Becky, but then realizing she maybe couldn't and had the backup plan, and Nikki was ready. She knew. They have a code. Quite
the plan.
Yep.
And we obviously, like in character, like this seemed really convoluted, but like this was the work of like writers who had to come up with ways to navigate this whole thing to try to make sense, all in an effort to fill two segments worth of Becky Lynch match. It was really convoluted, and it was very predictable with Alexa ultimately turning, but I guess in the end they did manage to fill two Becky Lynch segments.
What do you see for Alexa and Nikki at SummerSlam? Because I don't think they're doing the match.
I don't think so either. She's just like Nikki's pretty much full on heel sidekick at this point. No tease.
I'm kind of yeah. It's like it seems like they are happy with the chemistry and they're going to keep them together because at first it seemed like they were going to just do the dissension and build to that. It seems like they've just gotten away from that and they're going to be paired together for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
Becky is celebrating. Alexa jumps her from behind. Everyone's shocked. Natalya runs down, sends Alexa and Nikki out, and then places Becky into the sharpshooter. And she goes to the back. She's interviewed by Kayla and said that this is not about making friends. It's about being professional. And Becky, she is not going to shake hands with her after she beats her because she wouldn't trust Becky anyway to shake her hand. And she says she is challenging her to a submission match with the sharpshooter versus the disarmer, but she doesn't think Becky has the guts. Therefore, she is not issuing the challenge.
I challenge you to a match that everybody wants to see, but I take it back so that you can challenge me for it instead the week before the pay-per-view. This
is like Sonya and Mandy Rose having a title match that'll get them a title match.
Oh, it's amazing. It's almost like they're glitching, but in real life. Like it's almost like playing a season mode on a video game and it's glitching, but except it's real life. I love the idea of the submission match. I think the way they set it up here with the whole Fit Finlay thing, putting that focus on the disarmer as well as the sharpshooter, I thought was great. We haven't had a hot technical wrestling match in the women's division in quite a while. And I think in Toronto, this will get over especially well. I think the promos have been strong and the match type is strong. Let's hope that in ring it delivers.
I just didn't get why you just didn't make this the submission match.
I don't get it either.
Think about this. It's not as though Natalya removing this stipulation prevents the disarmer from being a way to victory. If anything, it's saying, I'm not going to use the sharpshooter against her. It's like, you're not taking anything away it's not as though this match can't end in submission.
Okay, but the idea of a submission match is that you can only use submissions, and it limits you winning via the manhandle slam or any of her other moves or surprise pinfall. So it certainly is a match type that's supposed to favor Natalya more. And this was
what type of match? How has Natalya ever won a match without the sharpshooter?
She's probably a pin, roll up or something. Some type of roll up.
They should have a roll up match.
Oh, only roll ups? So what
special in Canadian, roll up the rim to win match.
So wait a second. So if I'm already lying down on the ground, you can't cover me unless you get me to stand back up and roll me up?
Yes. Yeah. You have to do a 90-degree turn backwards.
That's brilliant. Maybe you should be booking this show.
Perhaps a 90-degree roll-up match with a protractor on the screen. Like they have those 3D images, they'll have a protractor and you can see what exact angle they're being pinned at. Maria is having a photo shoot with the title and is challenging anyone to pin her. And she walks into Braun Strowman and she's just badgering this guy saying, do you know what a pregnant woman goes through? See, you are the kind of person that likes making the baby, but not taking care of it. And he just growls in anger. And that was Braun Strowman's role on the show.
I did not get the point of this at all. Why would she... First of all, why was it Braun Strowman that had to be in this segment?
I think just for the comedy of him doing the reaction that they felt he could pull off here. And the size discrepancy.
Wait a second. So she's insinuating that Braun is just the type who likes to have sex but doesn't know how to be a father. And where's the comedy? What relation would you draw of any character on the roster, Braun Strowman being the recipient of a joke like this? What sexual thing have we ever seen of Braun? Like, is Braun Strowman the sex addict? Sex addict Braun Strowman? I guess he's the... Like, what? And why was Braun's response just, like, grunting? Like, he's almost, like, confirming that, yeah, I am a stupid idiot. I don't know how to talk. And when you tell me to look angry, I'm just gonna look angry.
That kind of is the character, I guess.
This guy was, like, at one point supposed to be, like, your main event guy. You know, like, what?
Well, he's feuding with Maria now.
Yeah, I didn't understand why Braun had to be in this. I don't know what it did for anybody.
Seth Rollins, Dolph Ziggler, with Rollins avenging Shawn Michaels. Seth comes out, and Shawn Michaels' music plays. And out comes Ziggler doing Shawn's big entrance, putting the arms out. This actually got a lot of heat.
Totally worked. Yes.
Yes. I thought this was way better than when he was doing the fake entrances for that time. Like, that was terrible. But this was actually...
Oh, yeah, he did that.
Remember that? They're going back to that. But this time, I
record scratch.
Effective. It did get some heat. He tells Rollins that he lost his smile. And then he talks about the old guys coming back to take their spots and calls Shawn Michaels and Bill Goldberg pathetic.
Yeah, so they're either setting up Ziggler versus Shawn, or they're building up a series of wrestlers all wanting to avenge Shawn, maybe including Goldberg. Goldberg avenging the super kick to Shawn Michaels.
Listen, there is no way that they are bringing up Bill Goldberg 3 weeks in a row in promos without some payoff. So I feel that you have to be expecting Goldberg to be somewhere at the end of this.
Okay, would you say the same thing for Shawn?
No, because I genuinely believe that Shawn Michaels is not doing a match.
But they're setting up the expectation for you to expect the Shawn Michaels versus Dolph Ziggler match.
Yeah, they certainly have teased that. I feel it could be something
more than teased it.
Well, I can see them kind of going half in, where Goldberg is
avenging Shawn Michaels.
Okay,
like with Shawn in his corner or something. This is so bizarre.
Goldberg beating him and then Shawn like laying him out with a super kick is something maybe they do. I mean, who knows? Like, if Shawn, I don't know. Like, do you feel that this guy is really going to do another match again? I don't think you can take anyone's word as completely whatever he's thinking today could always change.
I'm not sure who's coming back for what, but certainly...
This would not be the match for Shawn, by the way. If he's coming back, I would not be doing it with Dolph Ziggler.
Well, what I mean is just like, that is the expectation that they're certainly setting up here. You know, Ziggler...
But they've done that many times with Shawn over the years, where they've teased stuff that they have no intent on delivering on. Like Daniel Bryan. They pushed, you were just led to naturally think, like, they have to be doing this match. And they had no plans on doing the match.
Did Shawn ever get attacked for that?
Yes, he got put in the yes lock by Daniel Bryan, and that was his write-off. That's what he gave Bryan, was he got to put him in the yes lock.
I guess the difference was that Shawn had not come back at that point. But now, since he has come back and headlined a show, I think you're setting the audience for disappointment if you don't fulfill it.
Yeah, well, I feel like Goldberg, you have to be expecting at this point. And if it's SummerSlam, you got to do it pretty quick. We got one more Raw.
Mm-hmm.
They say Ziggler goes on to say he's the real main event. He's the show stealer. And then he does the Shawn Michaels pose, which Michael Cole yelled is disgusting. I thought Dolph was pretty good here.
Who is Shawn? Like, is Shawn like suddenly? I mean, yes, he is Jesus, I suppose, but like you can't even rip off his pose now.
It's disgusting. Way, how dare you? Ziggler gets sent to the floor with a clothesline. It's all Rollins until he takes a DDT onto the edge of the apron. And I stand corrected. They did a third commercial break here on one of the matches, because this one got one too. Rollins did his comeback, he blocked a jumping DDT into a Falcon Arrow. Ziggler then caught him, sent him into the post, shoulder first twice, and then hit a zigzag. Calls for the sweet chin music, but gets cut off by a super kick from Rollins. And then as Rollins is calling for the stomp, Brock Lesnar's music played, and he enters with Paul Heyman. Lesnar runs in, attacks Rollins for the DQ, and then we start to see CrossFit Jesus go through the stations of the Brock, because Rollins just got massacred for about the next 25 minutes. He took German suplexes. He got thrown into the barricade. He was F5'd into the post. He was hit with chair shots to the back. Then the chair was set up in the middle of the ring. Lesnar lifted up Rollins and F5'd him onto the chair as he's selling the ribs. And Seth Rollins, your big baby face, the crowd is chanting one more time. And Lesnar is down to do it several more times. He drops him again with an F5 onto the chair. Rollins is choking and spitting up blood. And he was doing like the very exaggerated, like wheezing sound. And then they go for a third F5 onto the chair. Heyman is pleading for Lesnar to stop. And Rollins is taken out on a stretcher as we go to the commercial. And that was the first half of our beatdown on Seth. How did you feel this came across?
This was very violent, very vicious for a TV show beatdown, to the point of concern, honestly. Like, oh man, like the F5s onto those chairs did not look like they were in any way easy to take. So if Rollins is okay, I thought this was great. I thought it added
like a really heavy angle for them.
I thought it added a great deal of like severity to, I would say, a match that, you know, at this point feels like it's a bit of a replay that I don't know how many people would have been interested to just see if they didn't do any type of major angle for it. They needed something like this in order to kind of reheat that feud and maybe take it to a different level. This was Brock Lesnar, who does not give a shit whether or not you're hurt or not, and Rollins gave him his body and he took full advantage. I hope Rollins is okay. If he is, then this whole thing was great.
He could have super kicked Rollins. I mean, that would have been next level.
Brock super kicking.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way to really get a tragedy occurring.
Did he ever throw a kick in the UFC?
Brock?
Yeah.
I mean, leg kicks.
Yeah.
But not a high kick that I can remember.
I wonder if he would have trained them at least.
Are you going to watch Cain Velasquez's match at Triple Mania this weekend?
Yeah, I'll catch it probably after the fact. Not live.
I'm planning to watch the whole show, but I think it's going to be a really like a marathon show. It's going to be one of those like 5-6 hour deals, I think. So in between segments, we got a sit down interview. The Usos interviewing Roman Reigns to promote Hobbs and Shaw.
Amazing.
Unreal.
Amazing.
Just unreal.
Yeah. I clearly, you know, something like this would have been shot, would have been planned weeks ahead. But God, the timing. There's no excuse, obviously, for like, okay, you can maybe excuse Jimmy Uso getting the DUI the week before this was airing, but there's no real excuse, I think, for the Cena delivering the line on their own TV show in a scripted like setting.
That's a great point. You did a DUI joke last week. Throw out what happened last week with Jimmy, but you did the DUI joke. And then you were going to air this week using the guys who have been hit with DUIs to interview Roman Reigns about the movie with fast cars.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wonder if like the producers of the film would see this and even connect like something like that together. But I can't imagine like somebody paying a lot of money for this type of promotion is happy that they're getting two men who now in storyline are confirmed like DUI, I guess, people with records for DUIs promoting their movie about cars. It really is crazy.
And multiples for Jimmy. Like this was number 3.
Yeah. We also had the second half of the beatdown.
Yes. I thought Corey Graves was great. When they came back, they showed the replay, and Corey Graves was pissed that they're glorifying this by replaying it. I thought Graves sold this really well.
Yes, they know how to treat these serious angles really well.
So they're in the back, and Seth is being taken to the ambulance, and he passes by Roman Reigns, which I like the fact that they showed us Roman Reigns, because you're watching this attack in the ring. He's the first person you're thinking of. So
I'm thinking of Becky first.
I guess you're thinking of Becky too, but I'm also not expecting Becky to run out and save him from Brock.
Right.
Whereas Roman, you naturally would think of that. And maybe that was a bit of a gap because it was a long beatdown in the ring with no help. But at least they acknowledged, him backstage, concerned for Seth.
Becky was there too. like in
Becky was in the back?
in the distance. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see her.
Yeah.
Right. Reigns is also with the Usos, and then they're walking in the background, and you see Gallows and Anderson jump them, and the camera follows this new attack where Gallows and Anderson beat down the Usos. Samoa Joe jumps Roman Reigns, and then they're beaten down. The camera, this is all one continuous shot, turns over and pans to the ambulance and goes towards the ambulance. And this was like, there was no cut here.
It's impressive. Yeah. Sometimes, we criticize them for overproducing, but sometimes overproducing is absolutely necessary because there were a lot of moving pieces here and probably only one take to do it. I think they probably did hold all this live. This came right after the last segment. So maybe one or two rehearsals, maybe if that, and then just like live on air. They pulled it off really well.
The goddamn West Wing scene of Raw. So they go back to the ambulance and it's going to take off Seth, and then it slams on the brakes, and we cut to the front, and Brock is facing the ambulance in front of it to prevent it from leaving.
It was awesome.
Just like the character from like the horror movie that is alive. And he goes to the back, opens up the ambulance, throws out Seth. He dumped onto the concrete floor, and Brock proceeds to F5 Seth onto the stretcher. And Seth is dead.
Yeah, man. Like this, I didn't see the 3 F5s onto the chair coming. Certainly, after all that, I didn't think that they would add to it by having Brock come back here, stop the ambulance, and just like toss like the ride he gave Seth coming out of that ambulance onto the floor was incredible. Like in one swift motion, he just like tossed him like strapped onto this gurney, like falling right off of the ambulance onto the floor, and then to F5 him again onto the stretcher itself. This was an attack where I'm not exactly sure how much heat they added to an already very serious and already a very hot angle. But it did get them to another commercial break. So this was kind of another instance where I felt like there were segments on Raw tonight that felt like as brief as this, maybe 5 minutes long. But even within the 5 minutes, you don't feel like your time was wasted because they delivered something visually compelling, something that clearly required a great deal of physical sacrifice and pain in the performance of a Seth Rollins in order for for us to enjoy. So thank you, Seth. Your sacrifice so that we could fit another commercial break in here without being too bored. Much appreciated.
Yeah, I think maybe coming out of this week, he's going to have a better reception than he did last week on Monday.
What was last week?
Oh, last week was his comments.
Oh, on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you take AJ and Gallows and Anderson, who have all just signed contracts recently, and AJ having this full table of food? Did you take that as like a subtle reference? Because that's what I thought.
I really didn't. I think that would be a really subtle deep cut.
I wouldn't necessarily piece it together unless it was literally 3 guys that have greatly benefited from the situations they have found themselves in with contracts up this year, especially Gallows and Anderson.
I mean, how much of the audience would really understand that these 3 were recently re-signed?
I think it was just a wink for their own enjoyment. I didn't think this was not for the mass audience to clue in together, but I certainly put those 2 together.
I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt to think that they're not petty to that extent.
I don't even think it's petty. I think it'd just be funny. So anyway, Seth is dead. I think this angle, this feud needed something like this because I did not sense Lesnar and Rollins feeling all that hot 2 weeks out from SummerSlam. If anything, I think it's almost a stretch that Seth has to come back and wrestle a match in 2 weeks after such a vicious beatdown. But
he certainly shouldn't wrestle next week.
No, definitely not. I mean, I hope they really sell this. I wish they had more time than that, but SummerSlam's in 2 weeks, and he should wrestle hurt at SummerSlam.
Yes.
Like, he should be all bandaged up. He should not just be coming out and he's Braun Strowman after a goddamn whatever he had. Ruptured spleen. Yes. Rollins may have ruptured everything here. So
I'm curious to know.
Angle.
I'm curious to know what his actual injuries might be coming off of these, because none of these look like soft landings. The guy took a lot tonight.
Yeah, Brock is also advertised for next week's Raw. I don't know what you do with Brock beyond this, though. I hope they have a great idea for next week's show in Pittsburgh. So the final segment, we were promised a Samoan Summit, and therefore we had to get our Samoan Summit way. Joe comes out, and he announces the summit has been canceled due to catastrophic events that have affected peace talks. He is here to fight and call out Roman Reigns. And Roman Reigns comes out, and they fight.
Okay.
Now, I wonder if they just had a different idea for what this was going to be, or if this was just always what it was supposed to be.
I'm wondering the same thing. You know, did potentially maybe the previous segment go longer? Did they or did they never intend on doing this summit in the first place? What was what does a summit even entail?
See, I don't imagine, like, it was just going to be an interview segment, I'm sure, but I don't know really what this was planned. This was as much a summit as the opener was a mosh pit.
Yes.
Just different names and titles for traditional segments. So Reigns comes out, they fight for a while, highlighted by Reigns lifting up the steps and throwing them at Joe's head. Drew McIntyre runs down to help out Joe. Drew gets sent into the crowd. He brawls with Joe. Then they return ringside, so it's Joe and Drew double teaming Reigns until Cedric runs down to help out Reigns, and he gets in offense onto Drew McIntyre and then gets cut off by a Joe clothesline. Drew takes Cedric up the ramp, and Joe and Reigns make their way to the announcer's desk. The Usos come out. Anderson is out. Gallows is out. Everyone's brawling on the stage when Cedric Alexander is on top of the set and dives off with a cross body, which was the big visual of the final segment.
Really impressive. I would say that dive is probably the most notable thing Cedric has done so far on the main roster. Maybe like, well, not the WWE, but yeah, like since he's been called up for sure.
I hope they replay this a lot. This was a cool spot for Cedric Alexander to have. Drew and Cedric then go back to the ring. The Claymore gets cut off with a drop kick, and then Cedric is stopped by Anderson and Gallows. Then the Magic Killer's avoided. Reigns is in. Superman punches all around, and then Cedric hits a Tope con Hero onto Drew. Double Uso super kicks to Joe. Reigns spears Joe, and the closing shot is Roman Reigns, the Usos, and Cedric Alexander standing tall at the end of Raw.
I like it. I think the baby faces came across really well here. Cedric certainly is boosted by having that notable spot, as well as I think being a part of this faction. Hopefully it's a faction. I mean, maybe I'm talking too quick, but it was a really fun, chaotic end to the Raw. To Raw. I personally would have probably ended with a Rollins angle, but I think for the in-arena crowd, perhaps this made sense.
Yeah. So that ends things. And
so where is this leading to?
By the end of this, I really didn't know what you're getting at SummerSlam. It feels like they may go through and just do Drew McIntyre and Cedric. I imagine the tag teams are all going to be thrown into some big match together. And I still think there's the question about Reigns and Joe. This really did not. He beat him clean and left Joe laying this week. It really doesn't feel like a match that we need to do again.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, who is Roman going to face at SummerSlam?
I would imagine we're probably going to have to figure out really soon because we have 3 shows left. Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll find out on SmackDown Tuesday.
Maybe it's the fact that we're coming off of so many bad Raws, but I thought Raw was really strong this week. It was a wrestling-heavy show. Thank goodness the commercial breaks are no longer a thing. And I thought there were plenty of segments on this show that created interest to SummerSlam that felt really like serious or very organic and just not completely, stifled by weird resets. So overall, I thought this was a good show.
It was a show that at times there was questionable stuff on this show. I thought there was enough to make up for it though on this show. I think the Gauntlet came off fairly well. I thought that in particular, the Cesaro Ray match, I enjoyed that a lot. The angle with Seth and Brock was a high point of the show. And the closing stuff was like really chaotic. And I think it was a cool way to end the show as well. So those would be my highlights of the show. So how do you feel about SummerSlam right now, where we've got a large amount of the card, but probably still a bunch of matches to come?
I think the women's Raw championship match is being built pretty well. I think after tonight, Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar feels like a much hotter match than it did before. We've yet to... What else do they have? The Fiend versus Balor. that, it's the Fiend's in-ring debut. I think Toronto will treat that one really well as well. Who's Kofi's opponent? Did they announce?
Randy Orton.
Yeah, that was great. Like, that was great last week. So I think that'll be really hot as well. So I mean, I'm actually looking forward to SummerSlam.
And then you've got the angle with Trish and Charlotte that probably comes out Tuesday.
That's right. Yes, it's a good-looking card.
I think this is shaping up to feel like a pretty big card. Owens and Shane has a stipulation attached to it, and I think that's a program that has been working. We'll see what they do. Bayley and Ember Moon doesn't feel like the hottest match in the world right now. Becky and Natalya it's kind of getting there. They've had some decent stuff so far on television. AJ and Ricochet, hopefully that's like a really great match and they get some time and click, which, they were kind of hampered at the last pay-per-view. I felt like they were hurt by the crowd, and it also wasn't, I think, the match level that people were expecting, but they'll get another opportunity there. And whatever else gets added to this show, it's probably going to be a lot of stuff.
Already on paper, I feel like this is like a much more serious and at least a far more attractive card than we either had at Extreme Rules, Stomping Grounds, or like Super Showdown, any of those.
All right. Before we get on out of here, let us go to the feedback. And we will start off with tonight's rating. What do you think this one got?
I'm going to guess 6.8.
6.5 tonight on Raw. Okay. Paul from New Jersey. One of the weirder openings to the show I can recall. I enjoy Carmella, just not when she sings. This Mike and Maria angle gets worse and worse each week. I'm curious to see how they get the title off of her, though. Cesaro and Ray put on some of the best wrestling I've seen on Raw in a long time. First DUI offense, you get rewarded with the tag titles. Second DUI offense, you get rewarded with a tag title shot and long match on prime time. Will the third offense net Jimmy an Intercontinental title shot? I couldn't enjoy this match. We can complain about storylines and who we want to see shine more, but this is another level of gross. With no repercussions, I don't doubt Jimmy gets behind the wheel of a car again.
Well, you see what they earned with a third offense. He got a promotional deal with the Fast and the Furious.
And was in the closing shot of Raw, like positioned very highly with the top babyface on the show. So I completely, it turned me off as well. The fact that it was not just we got to lay low. We're not really going to punish this guy. It was like, no, we're going to push this guy more than ever. It's like there was absolutely no kind of public statement of a deterrent to anyone watching this, that there's any discernible punishment that comes with this kind of offense, even a multiple time offense.
We got MJ who says, I never want to hear Seth Rollins described as Becky Lynch's boyfriend again. He's becoming a corny
Neither does she.
He's becoming a corny champion who is second to his significant other. I have no problem that she is the man in the relationship, but he is portrayed as a dweeb doing a catchphrase and goofing around too much. It's bad. I want to see Brock destroy him. Seth Rollins' rant aside, good episode of Raw in the sense that it featured a lot of talent. Cesaro, Andrade, heel Sammy, Ray, Ricochet, etc., all had good screen time. Even Cedric. I appreciate that. They are the future, so after a week of the past, a nice change of pace. The 24/7 championship, which was doing well in providing funny bits, was trashed tonight. First, the title is not on the line in the match. Is that right? I could have sworn they said that it was on, but MJ could be right. He says, then a pregnant Maria pins her husband. Now, if this was a BTE bit, I have no doubt it would be paid off well. But Maria, pregnant, on Raw? I'm not holding my breath.
All right. We continue here. Andrew from Cape Breton. I like the show tonight. I know comparisons to the Attitude Era are old and tired at this point, but back in my day, kids, we had a guy who literally murdered a guy's dog and fed it to him. Even after the Attitude Era, we had a guy going around talking about how it wasn't his fault he made someone have a miscarriage, but made sure to mock that tragedy. Do heels nowadays have such strong morals that they aren't willing to beat up a pregnant woman for glory? Wrestlers nowadays have become soft. The matches were also pretty good tonight, and unless they were doing picture-in-picture, it seemed like they got rid of the nonsensical no commercial breaks. The only lowlight was Jimmy Uso being out there, and I think something needs to be done with him, at least with him getting help. And did Nikki Cross call Becky Lynch the C word? Well, I heard some people comment about this. I didn't go back to listen to this. I don't know if the C word got in there. Maybe she was trying to set up a match for SmackDown next week.
What do you mean?
See you next Tuesday.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's good. We go to Neil from Northern Ireland, who actually thinks that Nikki Cross, pretty sure she said cow and not that other word in her strong Glasgow.
Those are two words that they may start with C, but sound very different.
Especially coming with, from Nikki. So, yeah, maybe. I don't know. What is going on with Sami Zayn, he says. No 50-50 booking for him. I'm struggling to think of a single win since his return from injury. He was made to look spectacularly bad tonight. Perhaps for Vince and his inner circle, being politically liberal or anti-Trump on Twitter deserves the sort of punishment that multiple DUIs might warrant in a rational world.
Jay from Colorado. I saw a picture last week from the Raw reunion where the Click and DX were hugging and laughing while Seth Rollins was standing there alone watching. It was dubbed the Gratitude Era. And while last week was a blatant example of the WWE not letting go of the past, tonight was a little more subtle, but not much. Vagina? Really? By no means. I'm not a guy who gets offended easily, but I do get easily offended by shitty comedy. And while the live crowd reacted positively, I groaned. I feel like we are going to get a news report tomorrow or Wednesday that Vince frantically rewrote Raw just an hour before the show again. I really hate to sound like a broken record, and I feel like a jerk writing in every week and being so negative, but I just feel like instead of the show progressing, it's regressing. On a side note, if you guys aren't watching The Boys, you need to. Best superhero show I've seen, and it uses vulgarity to mindfully advance the storylines, not for shock value. You will dig it.
Oh, this is the second time somebody's asked us to check out The Boys. Finally, Joe from Niagara says, well, Raw was a lot better than last week's ridiculous reunion. Strange opening to the show. However, I like the idea of starting Raw with a match instead of a long-winded, useless promo. I really enjoyed Rey Mysterio versus Cesaro to start the Gauntlet. I thought Becky's promo on a moment of bliss was solid. They need to keep her doing promos like that and far away from Seth Rollins and his cringeworthy promos. Okay. All right.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for your feedback. And that is going to bring a close to Rewind to Raw, but we will be back Tuesday night with Rewind to SmackDown and probably have most of the SummerSlam card in place, I would imagine, by the end of SmackDown. You would think.
I would think so as well. But yeah, we'll see.
We have probably 15 more matches to come, but we're pretty much there.
Yeah.
We got the lion's share.
We only have 7 hours to fill.
Yeah. I think they've got the first 5 hours kind of earmarked at this point. So now it's just filling in the blanks.
So we're rewinding SmackDown tomorrow night, but in the afternoon or maybe a little bit earlier in the evening, probably still in the evening, expect our latest G1 review on our Patreon feed. This is A-Block action. Yes.
We will be back on Tuesday chatting about the A-Block show, which is headlined by Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Evil and Kazuchika Okada taking on Lance Archer. Will Ospreay versus Zack Sabre Jr. So should be another really good A-Block match.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. Final prediction. Is the Lancer going to get the win?
Yes.
All right. I think we're now in agreement. You've definitely convinced me. All right. Thank you to everyone for listening, and we'll speak with you on Tuesday.